The numbers have been ratcheting up so rapidly. This is coming again before we even have an official order from the United States or any agreement, it seems like, in Europe that they would cut off Russian supplies entirely. How much of this is priced in as if that would already happen, and how much of that is because of what we've seen where companies are just saying, forget it, we're not going to do business with you?
I mean, Becky, we have a massive buyer strike, as you just mentioned. Shell has indicated they are not going to be purchasing any more Russian crude. They took so much criticism over the weekend, accused of war profiteering. You have all these companies essentially saying we're not going to touch Russia. So Russia could potentially lose 3 to 4 million barrels of exports simply by companies walking away. The lone companies that are remaining, a company like Total, the CEO at CereWeek was saying, well, we're going to stay in our Novatec partnership, but we are not going to take any Russian barrels. So it's basically a situation where very few countries are willing to touch this product right now. And that's before we've talked about any formal oil embargoes or energy sanctions.
We talked about how different this is from what we've seen in the past. You had situations where people maybe thought after Crimea, OK, this is something we're going to step away. But it got back to partnerships very quickly. Is this different? Will these fractured relationships ever go back?
Becky, the scale of destruction is so massive. We're talking about 2 million refugees, and we're only like 2 weeks into this horrific conflict. And I think we're talking about like the serious, sustained loss of Russian exports. I think it's going to be very, very hard to lift sanctions on Russia in any sort of short order. I think this is going to be long duration in terms of these measures. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world. So I do think market participants need to start thinking about seriously writing down these Russian exports for an extended period. And the question for Washington, for European governments is, where are you going to source those additional barrels to make up for this very significant Russian export hole right now?
The answer seems to be about anywhere that they can possibly find it, even Venezuela or Iraq. I mean, it has changed our perspective on who the worst neighbor is, the worst person on the worst country to be dealing with on any of these situations. The reality is, how quickly can any of them get ramped up? And in Iraq, weren't they already cheating on what they were doing and exporting anyway?
I mean, Iraq is basically out. I mean, we have 4 countries in OPEC that have spare capacity. We think it's only around sort of 2 million barrels. I mean, the one country that is sitting on significant spare capacity right now is Saudi Arabia. And the question is President Biden not only going to pick up the phone and call the Saudi Crown Prince, is he going to have to potentially send a very high-level delegation to Saudi Arabia in the coming days to try to secure additional barrels from that country? I mean, U.S. production is going to grow, but as you know, putting additional rigs to work, we're talking about oil coming in 6 months' time. We're not talking about immediate oil. And immediate oil, it comes down to the question of, is Saudi Arabia willing to resume its central banker role in oil? But if Saudi Arabia maxes out, then we're basically in a situation with no spare capacity shock absorbers. Like, this is a massive Russian export hole. And again, we're not even talking about formal sanctions or also a Russian response. We had the deputy prime minister of Russia out saying oil could be $300. He also made a reference to potentially Russia withholding gas supplies through Nord Stream 1, that very important pipeline into Europe. And so we have not yet seen the Russian response, but I'd be watching potentially what they do in terms of natural gas.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.